Welcome back, y'all. Today I'll provide a walkthrough of how to deploy a Log Analytics Workspace and enable diagnostic settings in Entra ID to export your sign-in logs. Microsoft Entra ID treats looking at sign-in logs and getting them out of the tenant as two different capabilities with two different licensing bars. Both are gated by the same license family, Microsoft Entra ID P1 and P2, but only the second one actually requires it. If you're investigating a compromised account and you need to reconstruct a timeline, when did the suspicious sign-in happen? Where did it originate? What did the session touch afterward? If those logs are already staged out of the portal, that timeline is gone. Getting sign-in data into Log Analytics Workspace means it's sitting there, queryable, correlated with your other telemetry, ready at a moment's need, not scrambled together after the fact, or even worse, unrecoverable. I'll flash it up on the screen, but here's a prerequisite checklist that you should ensure you have before deploying a Log Analytics Workspace. 1, an Azure subscription. 2, that Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2 license is active in the tenant. 3, a user that's assigned a security administrator role at the very least. And 4, you would also need contributor or Log Analytics contributor on the target resource group. Here on my screen, you can see this is what the Entra sign-in events look like directly in the portal. Most of the data is here and relevant, and you can see exactly what's going on in your environment. But let's say you need to get a more granular picture of what's going on for a specific user or users within your environment, especially if an incident has occurred. It's kind of time-consuming to come through here and dig through the logs and use these filters to correlate the data that you're looking for. That's where the Log Analytics Workspace can help. Let's jump over to the Azure portal to actually deploy this thing. Here I have my Azure subscription. This is a greenfield tenant, so there really isn't anything in it. More on that later. Think of an Azure subscription, the way I break it down is like a hotel. At the very top level, you have your Azure subscription. Beneath that, you have your resource groups. Think of resource groups like a hotel room. All right, so we have our hotel, which is the subscription, our rooms, which are the resource groups, and then you have your resources, which are items you can deploy like virtual machines, Log Analytics workspaces, etc., etc. Think of those as like items within a hotel room, you know, like a safe, a robe, the ice bucket. Those are all resources within the room. So if you think of that as sort of a parallel to how you define what's in an Azure subscription, I feel that representation kind of helps people break it down. Nevertheless, here we are. Let's go ahead and create the Log Analytics Workspace. First things first, you do need that resource group in place for you to actually place the resource within your subscription. So I'll go ahead and get that created now. Region matters for data residency and for keeping it aligned with where Sentinel will eventually live. So I'm going to go ahead and put Central US. You can tag it if you choose to do so. And then we'll go ahead and create that resource group. And then, of course, we'll give it a cloud minute for it to actually show up here. Once it does, we'll go ahead and get the workspace deployed. All right, you can see the resource group is now created. Go ahead and create a new resource. Here we're looking for a Log Analytics Workspace. Create Log Analytics Workspace. We'll have to give the Log Analytics Workspace a name. If I can spell today. And then, of course, we'll keep the region the same. Tag if you want to, and go ahead and deploy the resource. Now the deployment is in progress for our resource. We'll go ahead and wait for that to finish. that resource is now deployed, and we can go to the resource to actually view it. Now this Log Analytics Workspace lives within that newly created resource group, which also lives in the new Azure subscription. In Entra, we need to navigate down to Diagnostic settings underneath Monitoring and Health. Here you'll see the diagnostic settings that are available for you to send to your Log Analytics Workspace. I won't dive into the details of every single bullet point here, but if you can, go ahead and look at the Learn articles in reference to those. All right, for the purpose of today's call, I am going to send over my audit logs, my sign-in logs, and my non-interactive sign-in logs to my Log Analytics Workspace. As you can see, there is a laundry list of other radio buttons I can select here to send more activities to my Log Analytics Workspace, which will then be queryable from that specific workspace. I'll select Send to Log Analytics Workspace. It will automatically choose the Azure subscription that's available in my environment. And if I have more than one Log Analytics Workspace set up, I will have to go through here and select the one that I have. But because I only have one, it's already selected. And you also have to give your diagnostic settings a name. I'll be basic and just call it Entra Logs. Go ahead and save that. And there you have it. Pretty straightforward. Now you can see here under diagnostic settings that you have the newly created diagnostic setting that I configured and where it's sending those logs. It is also worth noting that sending any diagnostic setting log information over to a Log Analytics Workspace will incur a cost. That cost is really dependent on the number of activities that are occurring in your environment, depending on which setting you've selected. Because my environment is super small, the cost is going to be pennies to the dollar. However, for organizations that have over 500, 1,000, 10,000 users, that cost looks very different. I'll put a link in the description to this cost considerations Learn article that helps break down how you can estimate the cost that you would incur per setting that you enable. All right, so I've had this marinating for about 10 to 15 minutes since we made the connection to the new workspace. I've done a couple more sign-ins. It could take about 10 to 15 minutes for sign-in events to populate over to your workspace. So let's dive on over and see if that has taken place. We'll stay in the Entra portal and we'll navigate over to Log Analytics right underneath Monitoring and Health, same section. We'll go ahead and close this. And all right, here we have our search functionality. It is producing results that we can see now. I have quite a few non-interactive user sign-in log events and then one sign-in log event. So it does seem that the connections we made are in fact working. So that is great news. From here, now we can leverage KQL to actually create custom queries to pull back information that's relevant to sign-ins that are happening within our environment. Now, if you were to populate other tables within your workspace that are not just your non-interactive, your audit logs, your sign-in logs, you could also query those tables via KQL here. So let's recap. If you license your tenant with an Entra ID P1 or P2, if you hold the security administrator role and point at least one diagnostic setting at your Log Analytics Workspace, that's the entire barrier between that seven days of free info in your portal to fully queryable, exportable sign-in data. And here's the payoff. This exact workspace is now one step away from being a Microsoft Sentinel workspace. Enabling Sentinel on top of it auto connects the Entra data connector since it's reading from the same place that we just configured. That's for a future video. Additionally, whenever you configure your Log Analytics Workspace to capture these specific sign-in logs from Entra, it'll also unlock different workbooks that you can leverage to sort of map out and encapsulate via bar charts, pie charts, different graphical charts to show you sign-in log relevant information in your environment. On top of that, and this will be the next video, is conditional access. If you have a Log Analytics Workspace configured in your environment, you're able to see the Insights and Reporting workbook, which allows you to see what conditional access policies in your environment would apply to specific users and groups and which wouldn't. More on that in the next one. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. Have a good day.